Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. We've been having these discussions with various leaders in the church around our 5-year goals, things that God has led us to in the past few years to set as a faith goal for the future. And Jess, thank you so much for joining us, Jess. Jess heads up our social action ministries across the church. And Jess has the overview of what are we doing in the various areas. She, of course, doesn't lead them all. It will be impossible, even with her capacity to do that. But she does have an overview of what we're doing with a view to bring those threads together and to help us as a church to progress across these ministries. So Jess, can you kick off by telling us, why don't you actually start by telling us something of your heart for social action and the gospel? Because I think that would be a really good place to start.
So I think it's just been really exciting in the last kind of 4 years, just seeing God really press his heart into our hearts as a church for caring for those that are experiencing poverty. And I just feel really, really passionate about people that don't know that there is a Father in heaven who loves them, that people who have no hope for the future, for people that are trapped, for people that are brokenhearted. I just feel really passionate about those people coming to know Jesus and rescuing them and putting them in to his family, which is God's people, the church. And I believe with all of my heart that Jesus is the only one who can heal broken hearts. It's him who saves. And amazingly, he uses us, which I just think is the most enormous privilege, that he would use us, because we really can do very little. And when I think of the story of the boy bringing his loaves and fishes to Jesus, and he just brings what he has and says, well, Jesus, this is what I've got. And Jesus does this phenomenal thing where he multiplies what this little boy brings him. And I feel like that's a bit like social action. With us, what we are doing is we're just bringing people to Jesus and saying, well, this is what we've got. Jesus, can you do what only you can do? Because I believe with all of my heart that Isaiah 61 is not just a poem and an aspiration, like an ideal, like, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if we saw the captives being set free? Wouldn't it be wonderful if the brokenhearted became oaks of righteousness? I feel like, no, I believe that with all of my heart, that is the same Jesus that we worship today. Jesus is alive, and he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And what we saw him do in the Gospels is what he is doing around the world today and doing in our church today.
I tell you what's wonderful, Jess, just hearing you, is that, and I know it's sort of the thing that you think, does it really need saying? I think, yes, it does. Jess, you really believe this, don't you?
Yeah.
You absolutely believe this. And I think that when we're talking about faith and action going together, which of course is the message of the book of James, for instance, but much of the New Testament reminds us that, that faith isn't just it's not a mental exercise. It's not less than a mental exercise, but it's so much more, isn't it? It is actual activity. It looks like something, it feels like something, smells like something even. It's getting into the lives of people who otherwise would not know, would never hear, and whose lives just kind of tumble on. And it's saying, actually Jesus can bring some order, some love, some care, some change here, where particular change is desperately needed. So just to say thank you for sharing your heart there. I think it's important that this is a heart activity. This is, and I also know that you are very, very passionate about being organized too, and you're just supremely good at bringing together a plan and and making the passion and the plan sync up. And so it's not just, well, I feel very strongly, or it's not just, and neither is it just, well, we have to do the thing because it's on the, it's on the rota. It's those two things together. It's the passion and the plan, and then we get what we get into now. And I wonder if maybe you can begin to share that, to say, now, what is our social action goal, and what's the story behind it, Jess?
Well, just to say, Andy, that's incredibly kind of you to say those things. And I mean, I just want to say what an amazing group of people, what an amazing team that God has brought together in the church. We've just got some incredible people, and you know, God is just putting his heart in his people, and it's been amazing seeing how God's brought people together, and it really is just such a team effort. So I just really want to honor the team in that, and just love, just feel so released and delighted in the fact that God's got a plan in it all. And I do love a plan, Andy, so it's funny you say that, because you know that about me. But what is just wonderful is knowing God has got a plan, and actually he is the one that orchestrates plans, and he is the one that sees those things through. And that's just such a relief for us that, you know, we put our hand in his, but ultimately it's him at work. So it's been amazing. The last 4 years we've been on a bit of a journey as a church. We had Martin Charlesworth from Jubilee Plus come and speak at the Cottam site about 3 years ago, and it was an amazing Sunday where he spoke about being a church for the poor, having a heart for the poor. And there was an invitation at the end of his preach to respond, and an invitation that if people wanted to kind of give their hearts to God and say, I am here, use me, then to kneel. And the whole congregation got on their knees, which I've never seen that happen anywhere. And there was a tangible sense of the Holy Spirit imparting faith to the church in that moment. It was, you know, the hairs on the back of your neck sticking up. It was a real God moment. And I have to say, it was preceded by you coming, Andy. And this is something that you have really led us in. You so often talk about, you know, the twin heartbeat of the church should be the gospel and caring for the poor. And I feel like that's something you've imparted and continue to impart to us as a people. So I really want to thank you for that. And you came, and about 6 months later, Martin came. And so it's like God was running ahead of us. He brought a church leader who was committed to this. There was this prophetic impartation with Martin Charlesworth coming. Kath Oakes and I then went to something called Encounter Camp, which has been running for about 15 years and is led by a guy called Jim Harper from Hope Church in Worcester. They have a number of houses. They have something called the Good Soil Project. They've been engaging with social action for a number of years. They've seen a number of people's lives transformed by Jesus. And so Kath and I visited this camp, and it was incredible just seeing people who had history with addiction and mental health problems, just worshipping Jesus, people that God had kind of raised up as leaders, and just being together. Like, it was just, there was no us and them, there was no difference between people. It's not like these are the sorted ones and these are the people with a backstory. It was just people that had experienced Jesus coming together, and it was amazing. And Kath and I came back, and we just said, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if we could start a meeting like this, a bit like this week away? What if we could start a meeting like this? And I chatted to you, Andy, and then I think it was a few weeks later, Richard Townsend actually got in touch with you and talked about actually feeling God speaking to them about coming to City Church and bringing street life as well. And I should say, prior to Encounter Camp, a number of us had been praying. So some women in the church had been praying about social action, and particularly for women in the parlours and homeless women who were experiencing trauma and abuse. So we'd been probably praying for about a year before that. And so there'd been this kind of, you'd arrived, Martin had come, there's this prophetic impartation. There'd been about a year of just praying, like a gathering of women, Emma Cave, Kath, myself, Joe Willis, some others. And we've been praying, and then it was like God just started to snowball. So it's like we were praying, we had sort of dreams in our heads, and then God started to act. And since that time, we've seen street life kind of adopted into the life of City Church. It's been amazing. Richard's been leading that ministry faithfully for a number of years, and he does a brilliant job of that. We've started Encounter, which is, it started monthly. We went into lockdown ended, we went weekly. So we've been running Alpha, and we've continued that on Zoom. And then the next step is that we want to open a house. because actually just meeting with people on a Sunday and building relationships with people is great, but when people are in dire need, they need stability. And so we're in the process of looking for houses, and the dream is not that we provide kind of the bricks and mortar, but that people find a home, that people find community, that people find a sense of belonging. And so our 5-year goal is that we want to be able to provide community, we want to be able to provide home, and we want to be able to provide employment opportunities for people that are experiencing poverty and injustice and isolation. And when we say homes, we do mean bricks and mortar, but the Bible says that God places the lonely in families. And so, yes, we're looking at, a physical house, but actually it's more than that. It means that when someone comes on a Sunday morning and they don't know anybody and they've never been to church before, or this is a totally foreign experience for them, they can't really read the words on the PowerPoint, or actually they've just stepped off the streets, or they've got incredible challenges with their mental health, that when they step into that physical building, that they are surrounded by people who will show them the love of Jesus and make them feel like they have come home. They feel like they're safe, they feel like they belong, they feel like they've got a place. So that's my kind of passion, and we're looking for kind of tangible expressions of that in housing, in employment, and in meetings.
So the next thing that's going to happen, Jess, will be the house coming online, because that's actually happening, isn't it? It's really happening. It's kind of on its way. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. We're in the process of applying for housing, which is really exciting. So we want to have a house that will be local to a site. So we want it to be in proximity to our church family. And the idea is that it will be a house that we as a church family kind of adopt. It is a huge kind of church endeavour. It's not about a small team of people engaging with residents. It's about the whole church getting that we as a church family are opening our hearts to a group of people, and we're going to commit to kind of love them wherever they're at, wherever they're coming from. And, we want to start a house. We would love to open a house this year, and that would be for men. But in our hearts, it will be that will just be the first of many. We'd love to open a house for women. So yeah,
It's fantastic. I know for me personally, the families need a context, and families have context. Obviously, they have history, but if you don't have any family, you don't have any context, and often that is a physical building. And particularly in the climate we live in, I think it's like you can't exist in a way that is sustainable or healthy. These obvious things without a substantial bricks and mortar building around you. And I think we are so oblivious, aren't we, often, to the fact that is happening in our city. People don't have that, or they have very poor, kind of shadows of that, skipping between places and houses and shelters, and there's nowhere to build those relationships in the long term because there's no bricks and mortar to to surround them, and to do that as church is part of that. And yes, it's expensive, and yes, we have, I think with this one certainly we'll have a lot of help. We'll have a huge amount of help to make this one happen financially, which is wonderful, from the the Green Pastures organization that's helping us, and has done that many other places too. Maybe just as we finish, Jess, why don't you just help us to look a bit further into the future, because these things are coming immediately, but we've talked about 5-year goals, but of course 5 years is, even in terms of a life, and that's what we're talking about, people's lives, that's quite a short-term view even. So what do you see as you look ahead for City Church and Social Action going 5 years, and maybe just dream a bit for us, Jess?
So yeah, it's a great question. We often talk as an encounter team about we're in it for the long haul. And, it's not about running a project or running meetings. It's about loving people over the long haul, the journey of their lives and people coming to know Jesus. A bit like we're on a journey together as a church family, aren't we? I'm definitely not sorted. I feel like the longer I'm walking with God, the more aware I am of my need for him and how much more there is for him to do in me. And my dream is, what I would love is to see Isaiah 61 to sort of to be expressed tangibly and visibly in our church family. So to see God bring transformation to people's lives, people that were hurting, people that were struggling with addiction, people that were trapped in poverty, becoming oaks of righteousness. So, and to become the rebuilders of the ruined places in our city. And there are so many ruined places in our city. And the greatest place of ruin has to be in families. Obviously, we see it physically, don't we, in kind of areas of deprivation. But that's almost like an outward expression of the devastation in people's hearts and the brokenness of people's lives. And what I would love to see would be to see sites planted, with site leaders, with members of the leadership team that have come from a time in their lives where they, knew what it was to be devastated. They knew what it was to be trapped in poverty or addiction, but that's their history, because now they've been transformed, and now they're an oak of righteousness, and now they're the ones that are providing shelter, now they're the ones that are bringing strength, now they're the ones that people go to because they're the ones that are rebuilding. And that is what I would love to see, that we don't see social action as like a project or something on the side, but actually this is just our bread and butter, that we have people coming from all across the city, all with different stories, but we are God's children together. We're his sons and daughters, we're equal, and because of that we see God raising people up from maybe unexpected or unlikely places in the natural. We wouldn't expect a leader to come out of that backstory, but actually God's doing something that brings him incredible glory. So yeah, you kind of feel like 10 years, 15 years to see sites planted by people that have come out of dark places in their lives, that are then taking, the light of Jesus into dark communities. That's what I would love to see.
Yes, that's a beautiful vision, a godly and gospel vision to hold. And I know you share this passion that we would, as a church, hold those precious dreams and visions close to our heart and work with all of our energy and effort and God's strength to achieve some of those things. And I look forward to that day. I love the fact that it's not just an out there dream, that it's actually happening. And yet, of course, we know that it's just beginning as well. So Jess, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Andrew.
It's been a real honor to talk to you and to hear your heart. And there's many ways to get involved right across the church, the encounter teams, the street life teams, all of which are open to joining, particularly after lockdown ends, as we push forward together as a church.